Hello, welcome to episode 13 of Socially Awkward. I'm Joey Cotkins. This is Brewster Stanislaw. We're the co-founders of Inside Social, and we're going to mix things up a little bit today. In the last few days, we had the F8 conference, which is the developer conference from Facebook. Tons of exciting stuff to talk about, a lot to unpack and a lot to discuss. So we're going to sort of go away from our normal format. Instead of trying to get through so much content in 5 minutes, I think we're just going to open the discussion and see where it goes. We have a ton to talk about, so why don't we just jump into it? So I think the first and sort of the splashy announcement was Messenger as a platform. Mark Zuckerberg stood up there and talked about how massive all of Facebook's properties are. Whatever it was, 1.3 billion on Facebook, 1.4 now, 300 million Instagram, 600 million on Messenger, and
700.
Okay, well, a lot of hundreds of millions. But anyway, one exciting development is that they're opening up the platform similar to what they did with Facebook proper a long time ago, the Messenger platform. So they talked to us about a ton of apps that are already on there. You can already go play with them. But what are you excited about?
So, to me, opening up Messenger as a platform is really about Facebook trying to be the operating system for your life and extending that into mobile. And you know that Facebook has been trying so hard to own and win mobile for a while, ever since the public markets hit them so hard for kind of being a step behind in mobile. And so, there was all this speculation about, will Facebook create its own phone? Might have happened, might not have. We never really know the real story there. And then they came out with Home for Android, which is trying to co-opt basically the home screen and be an operating system within an operating system. What Messenger as a platform really is exactly that. It's an operating system within iOS, within Android. It gives them the opportunity to really have their own mobile operating system in a very kind of Trojan horse way. Because now they can attract developers to start working on Facebook's platform within Android and iOS. And so they can actually subvert those key players, and it can actually, if I were Apple and Android, I'd be saying, this is kind of scary. Because Facebook will now have the opportunity to keep their data and leverage all of the infrastructure that Android and iOS have built, but with Facebook's data and bringing Facebook's developer relationships on board.
So the initial apps that were released as part of the platform, the people who got early access to the developer tools, we're all kind of in sort of this fun category of things, things like stickers and GIFs and video editors and stuff like that. Do you think they're trying to signal anything, or do you think these were just people they knew that could add a little bit of value to the platform?
It's the lightest weight experiment you can do. They're starting with enhanced content sharing, and some of that's from publishers. They've got ESPN on their platform, and then some of it's cool stuff around making better images. But that's really about enhancing the type of content, but that's an experiment. They want to go further than that. Their model is clearly the Lines, the WeChats of the world. They want to do commerce. They want to do everything else. So this is just the start to proof of concept, if you will. But their ambitions are definitely much bigger. And that's what I'm referencing when I talk about kind of being the operating system for your life, right. Is that they look at Messenger as given that it's on your phone all the time, can be that operating system.
Yeah. One kind of interesting thing is sort of the divergence between what will become Facebook Messenger and the platform and WhatsApp. WhatsApp has really stated overtly that they don't want to be a platform in this way. Like, they really just want to be the communication tool. Obviously, both are owned by Facebook now. What do you think the experience is? Like, what does that manifest when you're actually using the tools? And can you use both, and what's better for what?
Yeah, I think you can absolutely use both, and I think that's what Facebook wants. I think the Facebook Messenger platform reveals a lot about the strategy behind the WhatsApp acquisition. They are going to leave WhatsApp as a purpose-built messenger for the world, right? Where it's not bloated, it's very, very simple. WhatsApp's joy is in its ease of use, of quickly being able to communicate without any other bells and whistles, right? Which helps also in places like Sub-Saharan Africa, right, where you don't necessarily have the best 3G connectivity, let alone LTE connectivity. And so WhatsApp will stay as this place where you can communicate very simply, purpose-built, and then Facebook Messenger becomes this big platform play, right, where you have commerce, where you have advertising, where you have all these other kind of things that sort of the East Asian messaging platforms have introduced. And I think if you think about the logic behind WhatsApp selling, they were in a place where they knew they'd going to have to start to monetize. And the model they probably would have used, beyond the selling subscription to WhatsApp for $1 a year is the model of Line, the model of WeChat, which Facebook has now adopted with Messenger. But by selling, they said, hey, we're going to stay and focus on product development, on building the best, simplest communication platform in the world. Whereas Facebook wanted exposure to that, but also needs to play in this market of how do we build everything else into a messaging platform. So by having both, it allows them to have one platform as the platform and one is a purpose-built communication tool. And I actually think it's a very good strategy.
Yeah. So you mentioned commerce, and one thing that Zuckerberg specifically pointed out was the opportunity for businesses to start using Messenger as a communication platform with their customers. I think the specific example they gave was someone buys a product and you can start to talk about returns and shipping information, that kind of stuff. I don't know, what's got sparked in your mind when you saw that part of it?
Well, I mean, Facebook, the original Facebook, when it's introduced Pages, it was one of the very first ways that brands kind of interact with customers in a new way, and they're kind of doing that all over again. Yeah. But to me, what's most interesting about having brands be able to connect directly with folks on the Messenger platform is actually push notifications. Right, so if you think about how hard it is for new apps to get you to turn on push notifications, and especially on iOS, you only get one chance to ask, and if you say no, it's gone forever, and then you've missed this really great engagement channel. Now in Messenger, everyone has push notifications turned on, right? Because it's a message. We're used to getting these push notifications. So this is one way that they actually subvert the bigger platform. So if I'm an e-commerce player and I'm saying, I'm trying to get people to install my app, but they're not going to say yes to my push notifications. Okay, that's fine. I send my push notifications through Messenger. And all of a sudden, Facebook now becomes that channel that gets all of that data, right? And it's not just the operating systems themselves. So to me, that's what's really exciting, because I'm a huge believer in mobile push notifications as an engagement mechanism. And I think platform allows brands to do it better.
And not only that, it's not just a push notification, but often it's the chat bubble, which is takes over even more of your phone.
Yeah, and I mean, David Marcus has talked about like how bad of experiences calling in and getting the phone tree, and that's all true too. I mean, I think that's what they talk about most, and we're simplifying the experience of getting customer service, of talking to folks, and they just want to own that channel, right? And I mean, the platform is very much about that. They want to own all of the data, right? They have great data around the social graph, around an interest graph, but they also want to understand everywhere you are in native mobile, and they've already done that in the web. That was the like button was this Trojan horse that gave them access to cookie and user data everywhere across the web. And Messenger platform lets them do that in mobile, because if they start having all of the big mobile developers integrating their native apps with platform, all of a sudden they get to see all of that behavior. And now they can start to understand what are the products you actually purchase, not just who do you share them with, what do you buy, right? And they start to build this overarching identity profile that covers everything, right? Data that Google never has.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, what this ultimately is. Some of the other announcements I think we'll talk about too. It's all-out war against Google, and I think slightly less against Apple, but at least in the operating system world, it sort of is. But it's definitely all-out war against Google.
Yeah, I do want to come back to that. I think we'll circle back around to it in a second. Anything else on Messenger before we move on?
I think that's good.
All right, cool. A little bit about video. So there's a couple announcements. One was this 360 video that looks like a really fun experience within that the Facebook newsfeed is now supporting. So I'm not going to really try to describe it, but essentially you can have like a sort of a augmented reality type experience where you can see everything around you in the form of video and explore it a little bit. Additionally was their announcement of embeddable video. So we know this very well from YouTube. You can find YouTube clips all over the web. You can now do this with Facebook video as well. So what are you thinking about here?
So 360 video is all about baby steps towards VR, right? Like the way Zuck obviously believes that the future will be one in which people share content via immersive experiences, via immersive video versus VR and augmented reality, and that's why they have Oculus, because you're gonna consume Facebook, you're gonna consume that feed in a headset and actually be in that experience. And you've seen the evolution, right? Everything was text, which gives you a written idea of what someone's up to. Then photo, and now we've seen this explosion of video. So to me, the immersive video stuff is all about getting consumers more comfortable with this idea, right? Because before I put on a VR headset, that's a big step, right? Yeah. An intermediate step is in my newsfeed, all of a sudden I can sort of have a VR-esque experience.
So it's baby steps towards.
Yeah, and I think it's familiarizes the consumer, because you've already been able to upload those type of immersive videos on YouTube everywhere else, right? That in itself is not a new thing, and in order to create that kind of content, it takes, I think, 24 cameras. So you can't just it's not like you and I are going to start creating 3D immersive content, but it's really about the consumption side and familiarizing those folks. As far as embedded video, I mean, that's what something Facebook absolutely needs if it's going to be a video player, right?
Yeah.
Previously, if you wanted to host your video on Facebook, upload your video to Facebook, you just share a link if you want to go somewhere. I mean, that's a really bad experience if you want to embed a short clip. So that's a feature that they absolutely needed. But I mean, I think it's an all-out war on YouTube. They want to be the video platform for the world and disrupt YouTube in that way, which is why they're going after YouTube content creators. It's why they've got embedded video, and they've gone to great lengths, also including the API around uploading video as a brand as well.
Yeah. So Google/YouTube obviously has a huge advantage in just being the first of the market. I mean, they have what is it, like 9 years of just so much video already on the platform. So there's that advantage. But what advantage does Facebook have with their video play?
So I mean, from a technology perspective, I mean, I think none.
Yeah.
But I mean, strategically having the interest graph is so valuable, and understanding the ways in which people interact around this type of content, whether it's video or anything else. It helps them to understand exactly the right content to surface. And when you can do that as a distributor, if you know that Facebook will help me maximize my reach, maximize my views, because they're going to be better at distributing it amongst the audience because they know what the audience likes, then I might want to go to Facebook. Yeah. And they're also going to give me better opportunities to monetize that video because they can charge more, because they can do better targeting around it.
Yeah. And also built into the system is shareability, right? If you want to share a YouTube video, it's not so simple, right? It's sharing links. It's sort of an older paradigm. Whereas if you go to find a Facebook video embedded somewhere, like getting it back on Facebook, really easy. Or within Facebook, if you click like on a video, your friends are going to see it as well. So that reach is really built into the system. And also it's a different consumption experience. I mean, I'm sort of someone who goes down YouTube paths that are strange and weird, and I get into the YouTube rabbit hole. But there's not really any specific intention behind it. It's just like click the next thing, click the next thing, click the next thing. Whereas in Facebook video discovery, you're being surrounded by content that you're sort of just being inspired by. And so, what shows up from a video perspective is suddenly something new or interesting and can take me down a whole different path of search and discovery. Whereas YouTube, it's just like whatever happens to be on the page at that time. Cool. So anything else on video?
No, I think that's good.
All right. So Facebook had made some announcements about increasing their support system for the developer community, specifically around Parse. Parse is their developer tools, essentially, and they added things for developing for the Internet of Things. What do you think's going on here?
So for this, I mean, this is a way to, Facebook wants to stay with Parse. The reason they bought Parse initially is they wanted to get very close to mobile developers. Yeah. They see Parse as also an entryway to IoT developers, right? And they want
Internet of Things. That's just
Internet of Things. So they want all of these folks developing on their platform. And the reason why, the value that accrues to Facebook is that if they can start incorporating that type of data, really it's all about data, right? So if they can start incorporating sensor data, right? And we talk a little bit about advertising Internet of Things, like when we run out of milk. Do we really want the ad when we open the refrigerator, which may only happen a few times a day? Well, if Facebook knows is taking in these signals and drinking from these signals and know that you, Joey, is out of milk because that's what the smart fridge said, they want to surface that ad to you in your mobile, right? Like in your mobile newsfeed and say, hey, maybe you should try this milk. I mean, milk's probably a bad example, but you get the picture. I mean, for that's just one other data source that they can incorporate to do better targeting. And so their goal is to provide, and this is not just for Internet of Things, but for mobile and for all developers, is they want to provide as much value as they can to these folks to keep them on the platform so that they can grit all of that data and ultimately help both the developers and ultimately Facebook monetize against it by advertising.
So also in tools for developers, and you can also argue for marketers as well, they introduced app analytics. It's not exactly what it sounds like. They're telling people who have apps that maybe are being discovered through Facebook ads, what users are doing, what they're performing, etc. There's already tools out there that already do this. So what's Facebook trying to accomplish by releasing this?
So I mean, in theory, I'm sure they want to create a better tool, but I mean, it's about filling out the product portfolio, right? It's giving developers everything they need to build their app with Facebook. That's distribution, that's infrastructure, that's everything. And I think in particular, this I'm not really sure the right way to phrase it, and I've actually lost my train of thought now.
It's all right. We can come back to it. So how about this? Do existing mobile app analytics companies, because there's a ton of them out there, do they need to be worried? or is this just going to support their efforts?
No, I mean they should definitely be worried, right? Like this is competitive with Twitter's Crashlytics offering. This is competitive with everything. That they're coming after the whole world here, and I really want to remember that thought I had because it was such a good one.
I'm sure it was.
I'll come back to me on that one.
All right. I mean, I think maybe we're going back down the data trail, like completing the whole picture of understanding what people do on Facebook.
There you go. That's exactly the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like you're reading my mind. Yeah, so that's really the real value there is the cross-platform stuff, right? So with App Analytics, you can start to say someone saw my ad on my device, then they browse the product on the web, and then they transact it on the tablet. So it's really completing that whole circle. And so they've always had the like buttons, right? Now they have conversion pixels because that's an important part of the advertising ecosystem for them in desktop and mobile. And so adding these app analytics lets them see native, mobile web, regular web, everywhere, and understand cross-device, I think, better than anyone else, tied to a specific identity and not cookies. And that's something we know that they pushed a lot is people-based targeting, and because there are advantages to them because Google's better at cookies, they're better at people. But also, I mean, I think we all believe that actually is a better model. I think everyone kind of looks at ad tech, knows that cookies are sort of a long time hack that is sort of a broken model.
Yeah. One of the biggest numbers that Facebook threw up on the screen when they were doing their presentation was the amount of money that they paid out to developers. And I think App Analytics is a part of that as well, because this will hopefully allow mobile developers to better monetize their apps, knowing who their customers are.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the times it's kind of unknown.
Yeah, I think that's Facebook's. I mean, more and more Facebook's model, right? Is to empower developers to earn revenue and to take an increasingly large portion of that, right? By partnering with them and their advertisers.
Yeah. So speaking of revenue, we got to talk about ads. LiveRail was the video ad platform that they recently acquired, I think last year. Mm-hmm. They are extending their capabilities, adding native ads as well as display ads.
Mm-hmm. All on mobile, though.
All on mobile. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about the all-out war of Google versus Facebook. This is very much going after Google's home, and also Twitter's home, MoPub. Is this how direct is this competition, and how much are they saying? How much is this a shot across the bow versus saying this is just another additional thing that people can use?
No, I mean this is directly very competitive, right? Like they didn't have that sort of mobile ad network offering that Google did, that Twitter had with MoPub. But I mean, if you talk about war on all fronts with Google, right? Like the YouTube front, and this is the DoubleClick front. And the only place where they aren't is the AdWords product, because that's the one place that Google really is totally walled in. So I think it's a direct assault on that. And we know what they're saying is that we have better data, we can do better targeting and drive better results. So we want all of this business.
Can you make the argument that it's different data though? Meaning someone, let's say a marketer is targeting lower funnel people, and they say, I want to go to Google for that because they have the search intent. Whereas I want to do more brand marketing stuff. I want to get people higher in the funnel. Can they go to Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook wants to own the whole funnel. I mean, yes, that's true today, but I mean, Facebook would make the argument that they have interest data that's maybe not quite as good as intent data, but like with platform, right, they're starting to get some of not just intern data, but also conversion data, which you also see in their conversion pixel retargeting stuff they're doing today. So they're getting more and more of that going down the full funnel, and that's ultimately what they want to own. They want to say, we'll help you own the entire life cycle of your customer. That's another key part about App Analytics is they're actually measuring lifetime value, right? And they're actually doing cross-channel attribution. So it's also competitive with folks like Tune, right? Is that they're actually going to go out and say, we'll even tell you which ad networks in mobile outside of ours are effective, right? We're just going to empower you as a developer, and we're going to take a percentage. We're going to try to drive you to our tools as much as possible, but we're really trying to empower you.
Yeah. Is the mobile and web ad market big enough to support all of these people, or will there be some clear winners?
I mean, there's definitely going to be clear winners, but yeah, I mean, I think it's an ecosystem that supports more than one player. I mean, there is definitely scale and size advantages, but I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a monopolistic market. I think if you're Google, you're probably feeling a little bit scared. Yeah. I think Twitter's a little bit well positioned, but for Google, it's a little bit scary, at least on the display side of their business. And what you see more and more, I mean, it's also scary to search because you see more and more people are discovering and engaging in-app, right, outside of Google's core search business.
Cool. So anything that we missed before we talk into some of the other fun stuff that they announced?
I mean, there's all like the developer updates that they did. So I mean, they've made some changes on the API. I think it's interesting that they've kind of gone back to basics on some of their, not gone back to basics, but revamped some of the basics around core sharing. So they've got new comment plugin, right, that is seamlessly real-time updating both on Facebook and on the publisher site itself. So that's in theory to drive more engagement. So they have new page plugins, that sort of going away from the original like button and share button, but new page plugins that are really nice, look nice, really seamless, consistent, and also new share sheets, right, for mobile that actually give you more granular control about whether you want to share to Messenger or whether you want to share to groups or whether you want to share to Facebook, as well as exactly how you want that share to appear. So they've built those tools over again, sort of, which is the original Facebook, if you will. So they haven't forgotten about that, and their core business is still about enhancing the world sharing between one another, and ultimately profiting from that.
The way they get all this data to compete with Google and whatnot is to make sure people are staying on the platform. So investing in getting more people to share more often in a more seamless way is certainly in their interest as well. Cool. Well, we talked a little bit about VR. I know you're excited about some of the stuff there. What didn't we talk about yet that they announced and that?
Well, in the keynote, they talked a little bit. The second day keynote talked a little about what's the future of VR is, right? And I think Oculus is starting to work on haptics, which is actually physically touching VR, right? And it's sort of the holodeck concept where they're not just thinking about my hands can move the experience around me, but that things actually react, right? So responsive VR based on haptics is something that's really, really interesting. I mean, we're a ways away from that, but again, that's where the content experience is going. It's like, you see the phenomenon around Meerkat, right? It's the idea that you're sort of teleporting into somebody's life. Well, what if you could actually teleport into someone's life? And that's sort of the promise of what VR and social have together, is that I can actually take a moment and actually enter into someone's experience and see it and hear it and feel it. And I think that's the big vision that kind of Facebook has over time. And so it's exciting to see how they continue to advance on the technology. Right now it's not anywhere near to cost effective or as good as it needs to be to do any of that. But that's where they're going. I think they gave a little bit of a sneak peek and talked a little bit about the technological challenges there.
Yeah. So also looking at some technology that isn't quite ready yet, but is more focused on what's happening right now, is their talk about drones, and not just the fun drones that the hobbyist can do in the backyard with the GoPro attached. This is 737 size drones that are solar powered, that are meant to provide Wi-Fi access for the billions of people who don't have it now.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what to think or say about this, other than I think it's amazing. I mean, Google already has their balloons out there. This seems like a really cool way to achieve this, but also it goes back to Facebook's core mission of connecting the world, and if people can't be connected right now, that's obviously impossible. So they're trying to provide Wi-Fi access to get people on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know nearly enough about telecommunications or drones or anything, so I'm with you. I think it's cool. I don't have really an informed perspective, but I mean, what I do know is like you mentioned, like Google and Project Loon, right? It's just about getting as many people connected to the internet at the highest speed that they can, because that's how these guys profit, right? And they run ads against all of these eyeballs. So the more eyeballs that they can have for a greater engaged period of time, the more successful. So these are wonderful technologies they're developing that actually can be accretive to the bottom line. So everyone should have the internet. I think we all agree on that. It's a liberating technology, and the sources of information are hugely powerful. So I'm excited that these guys are doing this, and I think they make it seem a little bit more altruistic than it really is, but it has really, really positive externalities, the development of this technology, and it'll be interesting to see which of these actually win. Is it balloons? Is it drones shooting laser Wi-Fi? I mean, I have no idea, because I just don't know the spaces well enough, but it's exciting.
Cool. Well, that's our wrap up for F8. Obviously a ton to talk about, a ton to think about. We really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Socially Awkward. Thank you.
Thank you.